Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are talking about something that's absolutely fundamental to owning a home, but it's also kind of invisible. Property title. It's so much more than a piece of paper. It's the official story of your home, and we're going to show you exactly how that story is written. So let's just jump right in with a question that seems super simple on the surface. You've got the keys, you've handed over a giant pile of money, but how do you actually legally prove that house is yours? You might be surprised to hear that the proof isn't what most of us think it is. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is get the idea of a car title out of your head. With a car, you get that single piece of paper, right? The title is the proof of ownership. A real estate title, though, that's not a physical thing. It's a concept. It's the whole idea of your ownership rights, and the proof is found in a long history of public records. The physical document you actually handle in a sale is something totally different called a deed. All right. Here's how we're going to break all this down. We're going to look at how property changes hands, what goes into the paperwork that makes it happen, the different levels of trust you can get in that paperwork, and finally, how to prove the whole ownership story. So, how does a property officially go from one person to another? Well, the legal term for any transfer of ownership is alienation. Sounds a little dramatic, I know, but it simply means to transfer. And it always happens in one of two ways. You've got voluntary alienation, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a free act by the owner, selling your house or leaving it to someone in a will. The key here is nobody's making you do it. And then you have the opposite, involuntary alienation. This happens against the owner's will, usually because of some action by a court or by law. These involuntary transfers cover a few different situations. The most common is probably foreclosure, when a bank takes a property back. Then there's eminent domain. That's when the government takes private property for public use, like for a new road, but they do have to pay you fair market value. And then you have some rarer cases, like adverse possession, you might have heard it called squatter's rights, and intestate succession, where the law decides who gets the property if someone dies without a will. Okay, but let's get back to the way most property changes hands, a voluntary sale. In that case, the absolute hero of the story, the key legal document, is the deed. This is the piece of paper that gets the job done. So what is a deed? Simply put, it's the written instrument that officially transfers ownership rights from the seller, who we call the grantor, to the buyer, or the grantee. It's like the official, legally binding handshake, all captured on paper. Now, for a deed to actually be valid, it has to have these 7 essential ingredients. You need a grantor who is of sound mind and legal age, and a grantee who is clearly identified. There must be consideration. That's the legal term for something of value changing hands. The deed has to have words of conveyance, which is just a fancy way of saying it clearly states the property is being transferred. It needs a precise legal description of the property, not just the street address. The grantor has to sign it. And finally, it has to be delivered to and accepted by the grantee. If you're missing even one of these, the whole transfer could be invalid. But here is where things get really crucial for a buyer. You see, not all deeds are created equal, not even close. The type of deed you get determines the level of promises the seller is making to you. And those promises range from an ironclad guarantee to, well, basically no guarantee at all. Let's think of it as a spectrum. On the far end, with the maximum protection, you have the general warranty deed. This is like the overpromiser. They are guaranteeing the title against all claims forever. A step down is the special warranty deed. This is the cautious friend. They only promise that the title was clean during the time they owned it. Then you have the bargain and sale deed, which implies they own it but offers no real promises. And at the very other end, you find the quitclaim deed. This is the non-committal partner. The language here basically says, hey, I'm not even claiming I own this, but if I happen to have any interest in it, it's all yours. It makes zero guarantees. You'd never want this in a normal sale. It's usually just used to clear up potential issues with a title. Okay, so let's pull all this back together and answer that big question from the start. If the deed is just the transfer document and the title is just a concept, how do you definitively prove that you own your home? The proof is in tracing the chain of title. This is a complete, unbroken history of every single recorded owner of that property. It's like a family tree for your land, going all the way back to the very first grant from the government, which is sometimes called the sovereignty of the soil. Every deed, every will, every transfer, each one is a link in that chain. Now, if there's a missing link in that chain, or an old unpaid tax bill, or some other claim pops up from the past, that creates what's known as a cloud on the title. And that is a huge red flag. It's a problem that makes ownership questionable and can make it really hard to sell the property until it's fixed.
So, how do you protect yourself from these clouds? The system really rests on three pillars of assurance. First, all of these documents are stored in public records. Second, before you buy, a company does a title search, digging through those records to make sure the chain is clean. And third, to protect you from anything that might have been missed, you get title insurance, a policy that covers you financially if some hidden problem from the past ever comes back to haunt you.
So, in the end, owning property isn't about having one special piece of paper. It's about ensuring your chapter in a long public story is written clearly and correctly. The deed is how you write your chapter, but the chain of title is the entire book. And title insurance is there to make sure there are no surprise plot twists. Thanks for joining this explainer.